Does anyone know what time it is?
Time to get a watch.
That always drove me crazy when people said that. I'd be like, think of something original. Of course, I need to get a watch. So, we are going to, in this nugget, walk through the process of setting up a Cisco network device to receive the time from an internet time source, essentially becoming an NTP client. And here's how we're going to do it. We've got this HQ router that has a gigabit 0/0 interface that's connected off to the internet in an ISP. As a matter of fact, this red cable right here actually reaches around to a live internet connection coming in from that switch. Now, ISPs sometimes, and in this case, are providing an NTP service right here. So our NTP server is actually the gateway of the ISP. So the first thing that we're going to do is get logged into our router here. Hit the enter key a couple times. Log in, log in. All right, so we're in the Arizona router. And I'm going to do a, let's see what the default time is. I'm going to do a show clock. And, so this is common on a lot of Cisco devices. First off, the time zone is UTC. That's Universal Time Coordinated. Same thing as Greenwich Mean Time, which is the center of the world. That's where our time zones begin. And as you move away from Greenwich Mean Time, you increase or decrease on your offset from Greenwich Mean Time. So that's where your time zone comes in, right? Now, before I even look back at the clock, there are a couple strategies on that by different organizations. You might say, well, I need to set my time zone, and we will in this video right now. But some organizations are like, we like that because they have devices all over the world. And when they're coordinating log files, they're like, okay, well, that's in Arizona, that's in Japan. And they're like, and then they got to go through the math to figure out, okay, when this log file says this, it's really this over here. So a lot of large enterprise groups will just say, we're just keeping it UTC across the board, whereas smaller organizations prefer to have their own time zone within there. So second thing is, as you can see, the time is obviously way off, or this video is really old. I don't know what it is, but on a lot of Cisco devices, they just default to March 1st, 2002. And this device was powered on probably about an hour and a half ago, or 2 hours and a half ago. So to get this set up, and let me figure out who our ISP is. I'm going to do a show IP route, and our ISP is right here. So that'll be what we use as our NTP server. So I'm going to go into global configuration mode, and I'm going to type in clock space question mark. And you can see that when we do that, it allows us to set the time zone. Now, I have the extraordinary blessing of living in Arizona, where we do not have daylight savings time. But if you do, you want to configure summertime. So I'm going to do clock time zone, the name of my time zone. I'll put Arizona, and then how many hours offset from UTC are we? So I'll just say -7, which is what we are, and we never change. We do not have daylight savings time in Arizona. That's great. Now, if you did have daylight savings time, that's where you would go clock, summertime, and you would say, this is the name of the time zone in summer, blah, blah, blah. And then you would say, this is the date it begins, this is the recurrent, et cetera, et cetera. So you would configure it that way. Now, you can see I'm going to do a show clock. I saw the system message right here, clock update, and it's saying, hey, time zone updated. It's no longer UTC. It's Arizona. You can see it's still way wrong, but it's adjusted it based on the -7. If you remember the time before, it's now -7 from that. So great. Now what? Oh, now we need to do NTP. So I'm going to type in NTP, and the beauty is to configure an NTP client, which is what we're doing, is very simple. We're going to type in NTP server and say, here's where we're going to go. And I'm going to scroll back up because our ISP is the NTP server. Right click, bada bing. Now, one thing I will say on this, patience is a virtue. A lot of times these NTP servers will take some time. So I'll do a show NTP associations. And right there you can see we are configured. That's what the little tilde thing is right there, that it says tilde. But right now it's initiating. The stratum is 16. It shows all the data about that NTP server right now. So a lot of times you'll sit here and just be like, hitting the up arrow, hitting the up arrow. And it's like, oh, by the way, it's contacted it. So it's filled in some of the gaps. Reference clock is this. The stratum is 3. So what is my stratum? So we're on the Arizona router. What is my stratum? 4. right? That's how it does the stratum number, is it just says, okay, if that is a stratum of 3, if my NTP association is a stratum 3, then I am a 4, and anybody I provide the time to will see that. You'll see that when we configure the NTP master. So this is the person that this IP address is getting the reference clock from. That's their NTP server, which probably is a stratum 2, right? You see how that whole thing works, right? So hit the up arrow, and this is what I'm saying, is when it's done, so if I do a show clock, it's still like, yeah, we're still way off. It takes time, and eventually, I'll pause the video. Eventually, this thing will end up with a little asterisk in front of it and be like, bada bing, time is set, and the whole clock will change. So we'll give it some time. Good grief, that took me about 10 minutes to synchronize up. It was sitting here for a long time, obviously enough time where I was just lazily typing in show clock to see if it would sync. And finally, now you can see at the very bottom right here where it's come up and said, okay, this one is there. The tilde says it's configured. The asterisk says it is now synced. So I should be able to type in show clock, and sure enough, I'm glancing up at the clock on the wall behind me. So right there, 1:38. November 21st, and down right here, 1:38, November 21st. So we are synced up. You can see that right here. We are synced and will continue to pull and stay in sync with that NTP server. The great news is this now sets our headquarters router up to be our source of power, our source of NTP for the devices within our organization who can then pull it and get its time from there. In the next video, we are going to set up an NTP master server. For now, we have seen what it looks like to configure a Cisco network device to receive the time from the internet time source. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.